Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Lindsay.
Yes.
Okay.
I love your work in all of Mike Flanagan's shows and movies. They're
thank you
so
very
good.
much. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been fun working with Mike. He always gives me interesting characters.
It's always fun to see you reappear in like the next show.
Yeah,
like, oh, who's he gonna be now?
Who is he now? Yeah, it's fun. Well, you have to do something, you know, on those ensemble things, because otherwise it gets pretty boring.
We have a picture as well.
Such a fun movie. Yeah. How weird is that? It was meant to be Oregon. When I first read it, I was like, yeah, Oregon's great. And then they were like, yeah, we're going to shoot it in Oregon.
It's my baby, Bumpy Jr. Yes, I was. Come in our sideshow.
May, Crude Ink.
I like these magnets.
Thanks. Yeah, if you take a closer look, you can see I tried to like base them all off of actual VHS covers or like copies of old posters. Like you see like the creases in that one.
Merritt. I played E.T. in the stunt scenes.
I'm Tommy Howell. You want me to continue? I can go through my credit list. If you want.
I'm Robert McNaughton, and at some cons I am bloody and disgusting. Oh, my finger.
I'm Henry Thomas.
Project going, oh, this is going to be a big hit. Well, thank you.
That's why I'm here. And good
I always need somebody to turn me on.
You still got it, girl. This is the After Hours E.T.
Hey, I only played E.T.'s mom, okay?
It feels strange.
Yeah.
Because I remember when it was in theaters, it was a couple of weeks, and then it became kind of an undeniable hit. But those first couple of weeks, it was, it could have, anything could have happened. And I don't think, like Dee said, none of us, when you're working as an actor or on the crew, you go from job to job, and maybe there's a year or so that happens between the time when you film the project to the time that it's released. So it's not even, it's not even in the zeitgeist of your life at that point, and it becomes successful, and then it takes on a whole different meaning.
To relate to the child actor experience, but he had nobody at his school that related to it. And he had to endure a lot of stuff, like, that you say, like that, but he had to endure being basically, everybody jealous of him, thinking he was bigger, but he never got a big head. He wasn't like that. He was a very shy, back then. Anyway, but the fact that he's like even somewhat normal today is amazing, because it took a lot of
You paint
temerity.
such a beautiful picture of me.
Anyway, so I had a different experience. I was doing a lot of stage plays, so after the movie came out, my life didn't change much, and then I was doing a lot of plays beforehand, and I kept doing a lot of plays. So I sort of didn't have the same experience, because I wasn't going back to school full time. I was just sort of continuing.
When E.T. came along, Stephen just offered it to me. But of course, there was a lot of secrecy going on back there then, because people were stealing ideas. So it was called A Boy's Life, and when my agents called me, I said, okay, but I have to read the script. They said, it's Steven Spielberg, Dee. I said, exactly. I'm going to walk onto a set and not know whether I can bring this to life or not. I've got to know as an actress. So I went over to the studio behind closed doors that were locked and read the script, and I remember calling my agents and saying, I don't think it's going to do a lot for me, but I think it's going to do a lot for the world, and I want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And you're
And I was right, wasn't it?
You were wrong on one.
That it wasn't going to do a lot for me.
Yeah.
It helped.
So having lived it, what's the difference between the impact of like a Star Wars and something like E.T.? They both have such a legacy to them and such a fan base. How would you feel about that?
Well, here's the #1 Star Wars fan at the time. It was right after, he was 10, and it was right after Empire Strikes Back had come out. Mm-hmm. And you had all the toys you see in the movie were Henry's toys.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was really excited because I knew that Steven Spielberg and George Lucas were good friends, and I knew that they worked together, and I thought, this is going to be something like Star Wars, because when I got the part, of course I hadn't read the script, and I only knew a loose premise, and I remember as a 10-year-old reading the script and being disappointed that there were no laser battles. But there was a spaceship, so that was kind of cool.
The neat thing was there's so many Star Wars references in the movie
Yeah.
because Steven knew that George Lucas wasn't going to sue him. So like, I wouldn't have been allowed to do the Yoda voice if they didn't have that relationship. You know, where you only see the adult's legs.
And so it was your show, and I mean, Dee, for you, was that a hurdle, or did he talk to you about that point of view? You know,
Never.
No, oh no, you're just like right. No.
No, but also
I found out at the end that that's why I got hired, but I agree with him. I just have that kind of thing going on.
But Dee had to put up with the uncomfortable position of being an adult on a film set where there were a lot of kids working. So what happens in that case though is that you sit around all day while they film the kids out before they turn into pumpkins after 6 hours or 8 hours or whatever.
Because of the school requirements.
Mm-hmm.
They're required to give you 3 hours of school, and so it's a constant juggling act of trying to get, you know, as much screen time with the kids and then rush them to school, but they try to do all that before they film the scenes with the adults, if they can.
Like 3 weeks, one time I sat in my dressing room waiting to work.
Oh wow.
With like a 6 a.m. call where she gets there, gets her makeup,
Yeah.
and then, but you have to be there in case something happens, and they got to be able to film that scene out of order, you know.
But I have to say, unlike a lot of scenes, because you know I've worked with kids and dogs my whole career, that when I did E.T., if I had a scene with one of the kids, which I had a lot of, the kids were always there. I always had you guys to work with.
That's true.
You were a very bad boy.
yeah, that's why they hired me.
You are the bad boy.
So briefly, yeah, I did try to pinch your ass in this scene.
True story?
Oh yeah, it's there. It's on film. It's there.
It's on film.
Oh my God.
It wasn't in the script.
Lots of stuff weren't in the script.
Yeah. So basically, here's how I was brought in. So, my father picked me up at school and said, "We're going to town, and you're going to meet a gentleman named Steven Spielberg." And at the time, I, was interested in riding horses, and I was sort of a country kid, and I didn't know who Steven was. Of course, I saw Raiders, but still, it meant nothing to me. And about a mile down the road, my father shoves a pack of Marlboros in my hand with a book of matches and says, "Here's the thing, you have to learn how to smoke this." And I was like, okay, so I'm turning green trying to smoke these cigarettes on the way to the audition, and I get to the casting call and I walk into this room and there's like 6 guys that all look identical. They look like John Stamos with perfect feathered black hair and blue eyes. I said, "Dad, let's get out of here because I'm not going to get this part." Well, little did I know that my role had been cast previously by a young Mormon kid whose mother wouldn't let him smoke a cigarette. So they decided to replace him. So one by one, these kids go in and out of the room, and I get my opportunity to go in, and I'm in this, sitting on a stool, and there's Kathleen Kennedy and Frank Marshall and Steven and all the casting people, Marcy Learoff and Mike Fenton and a couple of other suits, and he starts asking a few questions, and he notices my father's a stunt man and asks if I can ride the dirt bike, and I was like, "Yeah, I can do that." He hands me a page because up until this point I hadn't read the script at all. I knew nothing about it.
Nobody had.
And I started sort of reading some dialogue with him, and we get to the point of the meeting. He says, "How do you feel about smoking a cigarette?" Well, I fish out this rumpled pack of Marlboros and stick a bent cigarette in my mouth and start striking a match. He goes, "All right, kid, you got the part." And,
That could never happen now. Do you realize that they couldn't give a kid a cigarette on an audition?
That's how I get all my parts. I mean, yeah, and then I basically, said all the naughty stuff and tried to pinch Dee's ass and smoke cigarettes, and the rest is history.
I
all seen Henry's audition.
Yeah,
that's true. That's true.
It's amazing. Mine was memorable. It was on the day that President Reagan was shot.
Wow.
The assassination attempt on President Reagan. So when I went in, it was my first meeting with Steven. It wasn't really an audition. It was just a sit down, what do you like to do, and all that. But there were people rushing in and giving him the
Pulled out
latest.
that Yoda voice.
Yeah.
Got the part.
All it was he asked me, what do you like to do? I like to ride bikes. I play D&D. And it was like everything I said was the right thing. So I felt kind of backwards into it. Like he knew that I had a reputation for doing stage work, because that's how I sort of got the audition, was somebody had seen a play I did in New York and had me come in. So then they had me read with all the other actors that were trying out for Elliot. And I didn't read a script, it was just an improv with a stuffed animal. And they said, pretend you're showing that your brother's showing you this crazy thing that is the craziest thing you've ever seen. They didn't even say alien. So I improv'd with almost every other actor that was 10 years old in Hollywood, and nobody could hold a candle to him. I mean, it was like, when he showed up, it was like night and day with the other actors. No offense to the other actors, because they were all good, but nobody was as good as Henry.
I remember the first time I was exposed to Henry preparing for a scene. We had this sort of indoor set, backyard built on stage, and there was a swing set. And, of course, I just wanted to play video games at lunch with Henry. And his mother said he needs a moment, and he was over on the swing set, and like an adult prepping this emotional scene, and I hadn't been exposed to that. I thought I was going to be a stunt guy like my father, and watching people work, like what Dee did with Drew, and that connection that the two of them had, and being exposed to the vulnerability, the love, the trust, really shaped my whole approach to what I was doing, because I had no idea what I was doing. It was my first time really exposed to any of that. So watching Henry and watching Dee and watching Robert do what they went through to create this beautiful piece of work really was mind-blowing. That mixed in with a lot of little people and Matt rolling around on a skateboard and puppeteers, and it was, for a child, really a mind-blowing experience. Aliens and spaceships and all kinds of things, and the security was top-notch.
Oh my God!
It was like everybody had to sign in to come onto the set, and all the adults had badges, and like he said, nobody had read a script. In fact, today somebody brought an original Boys Life script from my sign, which I really wanted to fucking punch that guy and steal that. I was just
None
like,
of us got to
wow.
keep it.
Yeah.
People ask me if I have it, I never.
There's no
kept
script.
it. Yeah. With all the inserts, mine was stuffed full of pink and blue pages and all the different, because they would hand you changes that Melissa had written that day sometime.
The day before, I'd get my pages.
A lot of dialogue changes, like the night before. And that's what, like Melissa, every day used to sit. When I would go into work, I'd go through the works, makeup, hair, wardrobe. Then I would go sit with Melissa for whatever amount of time, and we'd go over all of the changes. And she had a huge hand in the making of the film.
She even came around afterwards. We had to loop dialogue for TV when they were going to show it on TV, and they're going to cut out all the cuss words. And she came in and did that, which is really unique, because if you watch some movies, Do the Right Thing, they use Mickey
like that
Ficky.
Purple Breath.
Yeah, exactly. It's always stupid. Or like in Do the Right Thing, they say Mickey Ficky for another word, which, but it's always stupid. But they made sure they got the quality dialogue, and they had her come in and do it.
I think it's a people movie.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And that's what sets it apart, is that it's universal, and it passes some mental barrier so that it reaches into your heart and reminds you of what the truth is. And you can't put an age on that at all.
I think also it was kind of directed by a big teenager.
Yeah,
So
no, seriously, he was like a kid.
He was very relatable for all of us. He would let us come in and play the video games in his trailer. Him and Frank Marshall had
games in his trailer.
Yeah, by video games, I mean video arcade machines. They had the full-size arcade machines in the business. I know where you're going. But he had the arcade, he had Missile Command, and he had an ongoing thing with Frank Marshall.
Want to come play video games in my trailer?
He went there.
Robert was like, yes, sir.
We're going anywhere today. I'm loving it.
And then he got the part.
I was good at playing video games.
Matt, I have a question for you about the suit. How was the suit? How was that, wearing that for hours and hours at a time?
Well, the thing with the suit back then is that the latex recipe was terrible, because whenever the suit got, whenever latex got wet, it shrank. So every successive time they put it on me, it was tighter and tighter. So, and also that made it hotter too, because the more it shrinks, the less porous it is. So it's not as breathable. So yeah, it was very hot. You'd think they'd have the budget to make me cooler. I don't know, they couldn't afford it.
But the thing is Matt sort of took over being E.T. because he could do so much and he was so athletic that they kind of hired him at first to do the scenes where he's falling down and drunk and stuff like that, but then pretty much he went into it full time because the gentleman that was originally in the suit got very sick and he had some back problems, and it was strenuous. But Matt was like a trooper and basically would do anything. Like he could fall over 20 times.
You know how we got E.T.'s walk, right?
Yes.
You want to tell it?
You used to say that I stood on my hands upside down in the costume.
Well, that's
I wish I could have done that.
Oh, that's not true?
No.
You stood on your hands, so.
But Matt would walk on his hands.
I'll demonstrate the walk right now.
Yeah, and it literally is E.T. So, like Matt was like.
Of course, I have dad bod now, so it's not as easy to walk around that way. That's true. He had a pot belly, didn't he?
So when I watch the movie, for me, what I see when I see E.T. is I see Matt, a part of Matt, who I love. I see Caprice Roth, who did the hands, who's an amazing mime. But she was also like a teenager. She always hung out with us. She was very, very funny lady, and so she did the hands, and she'd be underneath the machines, and they'd be pouring potato salad and beer on her head. She was a trooper too. But so, but the way the hands are so expressive, and then the voice is also a big part of it. And the lady that did the voice passed away, but we did get to meet her, but not till after the movie came out. And at one event, she was there, and she walked up to Henry and Drew, and I remember.
Yeah, I remember.
And all of a sudden, it was E.T. talking to us out of this old lady's voice. And I was thinking, "Hello, nice to meet you," because she really spoke like that. And
Lots of cigarettes.
I was gonna say.
Lots of cigarettes.
Drew just went like that, like her mind was blown at that point.
Robert, what was that rumor with the Deborah Winger thing? Like people were saying for a while that she had something to do with the voice. How did that rumor even get started? What is that story?
I finally cleared it up.
Yeah.
It was actually I read it in the book that they did a very extensive research. There's a good book that came out called From Concept to Classic. And what it was she was very close with Steven at the time, and they were going to work on something else together. She
Video games.
She was a friend with I don't know. But she was around on the set a lot. She was also very like a teenager kind of. Anyway, but as a favor to him, she did what's called a click track, so that when he was editing, he would have an actor's voice. Because when we were doing it, E.T. was always his voice. He would always read E.T.'s lines, Steven. So sometimes when you watched the movie, you actually thought it was Steven talking.
No, when I first saw it, I thought that.
He said, "Hey, what's wrong?"
I was like, they need to take Steven's voice out of the sound.
Because he was always doing E.T.'s lines. So she did that as a favor to him. It was never going to be her voice. And for years, I thought it was going to be her voice. and they just had to remove it because she's got such a recognizable voice.
She did like the original voice work so they could cut to it.
Right.
Okay.
And I didn't know that until I read that book. It's a really good book. It came out for the 40th.
She's in the film though, in the Halloween.
Oh yeah, she is in the film.
Deborah Winger, she's wearing a mask and she's carrying a dog.
wow.
And she has a stethoscope around her. And she's limping down the street. That's Deborah Winger.
You know, speaking of the Halloween scene, you all had great costumes. Dee, your cat costume, I wish I could find it today. It's amazing. Did any of you have input on those costumes? They were so, like, very ubiquitous, like 80s, very unique, and I love them.
No.
I had to do my own makeup. Steven wanted me to do my own
really?
face
I didn't know
paint.
that.
Yeah, so I had a drawing of what it was meant to look like, and I had to kind of emulate it. So
This happens, I want you to know, every time we do a Q&A. One of us or more goes, what? What? What do you mean you didn't walk on your hands? For 30 frickin' years I thought you walked on your hands. It's crazy.
40.
All right. Hey, it's not the years, it's the all right. Henry, coming into this film, did you know that so much of it was going to be on your shoulders? That this is going to be, I mean, you were going to be carrying almost every scene.
no, I mean, like I said, I hadn't read the script.
Yeah.
So
There's no preemptive, like, all right.
well, I had just begun my career that year, 1980, 81. I got a film. I'm from San Antonio, Texas, or outside of it, and Sissy Spacek was shooting a film about 45 minutes away from where I grew up, and they needed 2 boys, and I tried out for the oldest boy in this, in this movie called Raggedy Man, and I ended up getting the part because it was cast locally. Otherwise, I didn't have any ties or any ins or any knowledge about films or the film business.
Thank God.
I got Raggedy Man, and I had done some plays and stuff in local theater in San Antonio. And that was my only acting experience, and I really didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't know how to go about it. But when they would ask me to do something or to hit this mark, and I learned, and I was trying to learn as fast as I could, and I was trying to watch the other actors, and I was trying to, as a guitar player, you call it comping, right? Mm-hmm. It's the same kind of thing.
Let's see, in that movie you were working with Eric Roberts, Sissy Spacek, and Sam Shepard.
Yeah.
So, good people to learn from.
Good people to learn from. No, and that's the truth of it. I had the best experience I could have had right out of the gate.
Yeah. You got bit by a rattlesnake and miraculously survived.
That was my first brush with fame. I made the front page in 1973.
The only reason he's alive is because his mother drove 100 miles per hour down these dusty streets that were 25 miles per hour, and got into a hospital where they were the only hospital doing a revolutionary procedure where they were using horse blood to treat snake bite.
Yeah.
And it's the only reason he's alive.
And and the horse blood.
So he's part horse.
So yeah, but I mean, it was a bad thing, but I'm okay. No ill effects.
The original Pony Boy.
He did a movie later with Matt Damon, you may have seen, called All the Pretty Horses. And nobody realizes he was one of the pretty horses. Just swishing back and forth.
I was the ugliest pretty horse. No, it was kind of strange because it just the stars kind of aligned, and Raggedy Man was a Universal film.
Spielberg had kind of taken over for Tobe Hooper on Poltergeist, and they were editing Raggedy Man and Poltergeist across the hall from each other. So they heard in the rumor mill that Spielberg was looking for a kid, and the director and the editor of Raggedy Man gave him a clip. It was a Universal movie, it was all in-house. They said, oh, well, we'll bring him out and look at this kid. And so that's what they did.
And you know, Poltergeist was supposed to be the big hit. E.T. was this little film that he was kind of doing on the side.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you said that about kids and everything in the 80s. You know, like, before E.T., that wasn't a possibility in the studio's mind.
Yeah.
Putting out a studio film that was like, you know, a kid movie, that wasn't going to get the mainstream audience, so it wasn't going to make a lot of money. So, like, the first trailers for E.T., they're all ominous. You know, it's like, he's 3,000 million, you know, whatever.
It was like Halloween.
Yeah, it's like this hand coming in, and spooky outhouse thing with the lights and fog, and, you know, but it's because the studio, they were hedging their bets. They wanted to pack people in the first week, and then people responded to the emotion of it and the compassion of it, and they changed tack and catered to that, and all
And
the
a month
other
later, we were all eating Reese's Pieces.
You guys know that they offered it to M&M's first, right? And M&M's didn't want to be involved with an alien. And I thought, man, the day that E.T. came out, somebody got fired.
That's what you said. That's what you said last time. And the same thing happened with Dungeons and Dragons. There's a scene in the beginning where we're all playing Dungeons and Dragons, and they sent just those pages of the script to the creator, to Gary Gygax, and he misunderstood somehow that there was money on the table for the pizza, and he thought that implied that we were gambling on the game, and he said, I will not allow gambling on Dungeons and Dragons. I overheard Kathy Kennedy saying that we can't use the name, you know, and why. She explained to Steven why they couldn't use the name, but they could have done tie-ins. And, you know.
There are a lot of oddities to the film, too. I always thought that Mary is one of them. I'm glad you said that, because I never understood that. Why are they growing corn in the backyard? Why are elementary school students cutting open frogs? I never got to do that when I was a kid. I love that about the film, that there are oddities about it.
Yeah.
Spielberg's isms, I think.
Can we hear the Yoda voice?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
You have absolute power. Yes. The laugh. I still can't get over how brilliant his laugh was, because he cracked himself up. When you watch Empire Strikes Back, the whole scene with Luke Skywalker, he's like making himself laugh. It's so great.
That was a cool
That was
scene.
Henry's idea that I do the Yoda voice, by the way.
Well, because Robert, when we were working, Robert was, what, 15?
I was 14.
14.
You were 10.
And I was 10. But
I'm
Robert
not
was...
telling you how old I am.
But Robert was like keyed into like all the cool music. And he
I was listening to Dr. Demento.
Dr. Demento.
Consider that
radio
Of
show.
course you were.
And so, you know, Weird Al Yankovic had just released Yoda, the Lola parody of the Kings.
It wasn't even a record. He just sent the tape into Dr. Demento.
Yeah, Dr. Demento played it, and we heard it, and I was like, oh, that's
It was
the
a
best thing
takeoff
I've
on
ever
the
heard.
Kings, yeah.
And so then I became obsessed with it, and so I was like, Robert, you need to do the Yoda voice.
He said that sounds like something Yoda would say. So it was his idea that I say that line, that specifically that line, you have absolute power. And a friend of mine, Brian, recently pointed out that I didn't say it in the Yoda syntax. But that would have required changing Melissa Matheson's line, which, you know.
You don't do.
Yeah, so according to him, it should be absolute power you have.
We had a great team of special effects guys. There were 13 guys that operated E.T. Some of them were on his respiratory system. Some of them were doing his eyes. Some of them were
Heart.
His heart, his mouth.
His neck.
And it was the first time I ever remember seeing like video assist on a set. It wasn't done back then. You didn't have playback or anything like you do now. But they had monitors like closed circuit television monitors on the stage, and they would watch. And so my perception of what E.T.'s voice was like came from the chorus of the 13 operators that would be on the other end of the stage, because they would vocalize the lip movements and stuff. So there would be 13 guys going, ouch. You know?
I wasn't a part of that. Like,
Yeah.
I was always, they were separate, and I think that was so they didn't distract us.
Right.
But you worked more closely with E.T. than anybody, so
Yeah, so
it's a
I mean,
different experience.
It was just, a lot of, it was a lot of technical stuff. That as a kid, you just try to stay in the fantasy of it anyway, but yeah, it would be challenging now, I think, for me to like interact with the animatronic thing.